could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello everyone, today we're meeting Jim Marshall. He is the polymathic intellectual with a knowledge in different areas of studies, including the study and practice of human potential and development. Jim also the inventor of Septemics, which is the transformational work founded in areas of social science and psychological, science, right, Jim? You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Psychological philosophy.
Right. And we would like to know more about this new area that we never heard before, Septemics. If you can just dive into describing more about this area of study for those who hear it for the first time, and that would be me as well. So please start with describing it.
Okay. I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I constructed a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics and published it in the book called Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. 27 years of direct observation has shown that this book would dramatically improve the life of anyone who takes advantage of it. Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to humans occur in a sequence of 7 steps. Literally, the word Septemics means of or pertaining to 7. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales which span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any situation that arises in the life of any person can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these scales. 24 of the scales apply primarily to individuals, and 11 apply primarily to groups. I wrote this book to help people. Each of these 35 scales provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, or activity moves persons up these scales, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. More importantly, just finding out what level you or another person is at on any scale is by itself enlightening and beneficial. And finally, once you know the actual level of a person on any scale, you can improve that person by moving him up one level at a time. All of these advantages represent major steps forward for society. Each of these scales is an axis against which to evaluate human behavior, and combined, they empower the person to understand, predict, and manage human affairs to a degree hitherto unattainable by most.
Well, that's very interesting to hear. That's something I never seen before. So that's a new way of approaching kind of like our understanding of which level we're at. And as I see it, it's beneficial for everybody to kind of like have that self-realization, which level I'm at and how can I move up level, right? And is there like practical tools in the book that will help me to find a way to up level my own like development in a way?
Yes. First of all, I should tell you that the book is extremely user-friendly. I worked on this book for 25 years to make it foolproof so that anybody who can read English reasonably well can benefit from this book. Also, the book is extremely specific and explicit. It tells you unambiguously how to learn the subject, how to understand each scale, how to find your level, how to find another person's level, how to move either yourself or another person up a level. It's very clear. So once you have the book, that's all you need. In other words, the book stands alone. You don't need to, once you have the book, you don't need to take a course, go anywhere, spend any money, hire somebody, join a church, join a school, or everything is in the book, and it's really self-explanatory. For example, there is not only a glossary in front of each of the 35 chapters, but there's even a glossary in front of the introduction.
Okay.
So I'm telling you with specificity what definition I'm using. In each of the 35 scales, each scale has a name, and each level has a name. And I'm giving you the definitions of those. So it's very helpful to help the person to grasp it. Also, I'm telling you exactly which definition I'm using. For example, there's a scale of communication. Now, if you look up the word communication, it has maybe 30 or 35 definitions. So a person could reasonably ask, well, which definition is he using? And I give a specific definition of communication, which is not long, to tell you exactly what definition I'm using. Also, each of the 35 chapters has a name, and that name has a synonym, which gives you some depth of understanding. Also, each of the 7 levels has a name, and each of those levels has a synonym. So I'm making it very easy for you to grasp what this is about generally and specifically.
I see. So it's very people-friendly user, so they can just see in real time like what kind of definition you're using, so not being like confused or guessing what exactly you meant by that, but specifically this is what you meant and this is what it is, so they have a clear understanding of what that entitles, what that level or specific area of what you describe in the chapter, what it is about. And also, like, I understand that you not only learn about yourself, but about others as well, people that you interact with, and you can also kind of realize which level they're at as well and help them to move, right?
That's right.
If they're willing to.
Right. So let's take, for example, one of the scales, the scale of motivation. Okay, so I have determined that there are only 7 basic human motivations, and they're in a sequence. So you could look at the scale and you can find your motivation toward your spouse, your motivation toward your son, your motivation toward your mother, your motivation toward your boss, and so forth. But also you could find your boss's motivation toward you, your husband's motivation toward you, your daughter's motivation toward you. See, so it goes both ways. And in each case, when you find the correct level, you will have a realization. So this book is very much like putting on eyeglasses and looking in the mirror. It's you see yourself in this book very easily. It's not inscrutable or obscure. And I'll tell you a story in that regard. About 20 years ago, when I was in the early stages of developing this subject, I was talking to a friend of mine about politics and government. And I said to him, wait a minute, let me show you something. So I opened up the transcript to the scale of government. I didn't say anything. I just handed it to him. So he took it. He looked at it. And in about 1 second, he pointed and he said, there, I'm right there. He found his level on that scale without my even suggesting that that's what it was for. He didn't know anything about septemics. And that in general is how this works. This works so well, people have realizations that they're not even trying to have. For example, I could show some guy a scale, right? He's not thinking about his mother-in-law at all, right? But he'll get, let's say, down to level 4, and he'll say, wait a minute, this is my mother-in-law. This is exactly how she is. So you see, he will have a realization about her that he wasn't even searching for, just as a result of seeing the material, because it's very clear. The other thing you have to realize is all of this is based on natural phenomena, okay? All of this was discovered empirically over many decades. And because it's natural law, it resonates with the reader.
Yeah, that's true. That's everything based on natural phenomena, like you mentioned. We kind of feel it in our, I don't know, like DNA, genes. It's somewhere inside of us that resonates. And on that level, we kind of like see clearly that this is what it means. Like you just mentioned, your friend, he just realized this is where his mother-in-law at this level. And that's interesting to know, because some people struggling to understand the way they are or the way they behave towards others, or others, interacting with them. So they kind of like lost and feeling, I guess, stuck sometimes, and they need to have that clarity in their lives. So I feel like that book will help them so much to discover who they are and where they're going and how they can improve on utilizing certain tools, techniques, tips in the book to like move forward. And I also wonder, how did it start for you? How did you have that idea of, publishing the book, of first of all, like having all the material to write a book and, distribute it to masses?
Okay, so this is kind of a long answer, but I want to explain it clearly. First of all, you have to realize that I was accepted into an elite engineering school at the age of 16 and attended on academic scholarship. So I was a natural engineer. By the time I had my bachelor's degree, I knew I did not want to engineer anything physical, such as electrons or airfoils or electromagnetic fields or any of the things that engineers usually work with. I wanted to engineer the human psyche. So to make a long story short, I had a long career as a human development engineer, working one-on-one with hundreds of clients for many thousands of hours. All of my clients improved. As they were improving, I noticed that they were improving in ways that were predictable to me. In other words, as a result of observing many clients over many years, I started to see patterns. Now, I never told this to anyone, but I made notes. And as time went on, I started to figure out that my clients were actually going up scales. Like a client would be at a certain level that I knew, although I didn't tell him what it was. And I would know as a result of the session, he was going to go up to the next level, although he didn't know what that was either. And that's what would happen. Now, this happened thousands and thousands of times over many decades. Now, as this happened, I just kept making notes. And I realized that there are these various scales that run across different axes. See, one guy will improve in terms of his thinking. Another guy will improve in terms of, let's say, his motivation. See, that's a different axis. So by about 1995, I had about 32 scales. And again, nobody knew about this. Okay, it was just me and my notes. And they varied in lengths between 3 and 7. Now, I had one scale in particular that was 6 levels that I absolutely knew was correct. because I had been using it for decades. In 95, I realized one day it had a 7th level. And when I inserted that 7th level into the 6th level scale, it manifested mathematically. All of these implications jumped out at me. It went from being linear, which is what a scale is, to being planar, meaning it was more like a table because of all the implications that jumped out from it. And then I realized that I had found something big. I wasn't searching for anything. I was just helping my clients and making notes. But I realized this is natural law. Anything that has mathematics embedded in it is natural law. So then I asked myself, I wonder how many of these other 32 scales or whatever it was I had at the time are actually 7-level scales, but had not been developed all the way because I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients and making notes. So I looked at these scales, and because I knew what I was looking for, I was able to develop these scales into 7-level scales, all of them. And as each scale went to 7 levels, it manifested mathematically.
So I see the 7 number, it's kind of like magical number. It has to be in each one of the scale. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
And why 7?
Well, actually, in the introduction to my book, which is, by the way, the longest section of the book, there's a section called Why 7? And I explain exactly why it's 7. It's a mathematical explanation. And I don't want to go into that right now, because anybody can go on my website and read it himself. So I want to finish the explanation. So I realized I had these scales, and I realized this is a subject. This had never existed before. So then I thought, wait a minute, I can go from helping people by the hundreds, which is what I was doing, to helping people by the millions by putting this in a book and getting it out. So then I said, okay, this is a book. I have to put this in a book. So in December of 95, I finished the first draft of the book. And I gave the transcript to colleagues of mine, all of who had graduate degrees in various subjects. They all loved it. The reactions were different from each one, but they were all very positive. So then I knew, okay, this is exactly what I think it is. It is a discovery of natural law that will help people to understand themselves and others. So then I became devoted to writing the book, perfecting the system and getting it out. Now I have to realize first I had to discover the phenomena, which was largely done by 95. Although I did find 3 more scales while I was writing the book. So there are 35. Then I had to take this data that I had, and I had to use it to construct a practical philosophic system. That took about 20 years because there are a lot of components to this. There are actually a lot of moving parts that I had to deal with to make this foolproof. For example, I had these scales, but I did not know what axis the scale was measuring. In other words, each of the scale has 7 levels. Well, 7 levels of what? So I had to work out what the axis was. That was not simple or easy in some cases. In some cases, it was fairly clear, but in some cases, it was not. In some cases, it took many years for me to figure out what the axis was. Because once you know the axis, and then you see the 7 levels, it's a real eye-opener for anybody. Then I had to convey this in a way that would make sense to the average reader. Now that was a lot of work because this is an 86,000 word book. I had to go through it literally word by word to decide how can I best express this. Now I realized there were 35 scales, each of which has 7 levels. That's 245 different levels, each of which had to be verified and expressed in a way that would connect with the average reader. So as the years went by, I would do a rewrite and I would give it to my colleagues, students, associates, clients, and I would get feedback. And as I got me feedback, I made adjustments. And this went on for 25 years till I finally said, I'm not going to live forever. I'm going to publish this now. So that was 2 years ago. So this book is a text on a new subject. The subject did not exist prior to 1995 when I discovered it. Now, the data in this book are vital for every person and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random. If someone were to invite you to a rendezvous, you would certainly expect them to tell you the time, the date, the location, and perhaps how to get there. Needless to say, it's very difficult to get somewhere if you don't know where you are, don't know where you're going, and don't know how to get to your destination. Now, this sounds idiotic, but most people do this regularly, so much so that it's considered normal. The overwhelming majority of humans, I'm talking about over 95%, do not know with any specificity where they are, where they're going, or how to get there across these 35 axes. So this book tells you exactly how to get where you're trying to go by giving you the level you're at or the level another person is at, the level just above it, which is the level that you should shoot for, and also gives you the level below, which is where you will end up if you fail. Now, you have to realize, let's say hypothetically you're at level 4. You will be able to get to level 3 fairly easily. But you will not be able to go from 4 to 1 or 2. Impossible. Think of it this way. Let's say you're on the first floor, you want to go to the third floor. One way or another, you have to go through the second, the third, and the fourth. Whether you take the stairs, the escalator, the elevator, or go outside the building and use a rope ladder, you have to go through those levels, okay? So you cannot skip a level. I already know from working with this material for most of my adult life, you cannot skip a level. It's impossible. This is good news because I'm giving you the gradients. I'm telling you, when you find out where you are, I'm telling you where you want to shoot for. This solves the gradient problem that most people have suffered from for 6,000 years. You see, most people have understand they have a situational problem, but they don't know how to solve it. This book tells you with specificity. You find the scale that's relevant to your situation. Usually it's more than one. You find your level, and then you move up to the level just above that.
I have a question. So I understand that you cannot skip a level, but how long would it take me to move up the level on average? And what kind of factors affect that, the term that will take me?
Well, first of all, there are some scales. You see, there are general scales and specific scales. The general scales, it's very difficult to move on those scales. For example, the scale of basic purposes. Every human being has one of 7 basic purposes. Now, of course, everyone has thousands of purposes, but there's underneath all of those is one basic purpose. And I have done the heavy lifting in telling you what they are. So when you look at that scale, see, you're only choosing from among 7. If you didn't have the scale, you would be in a quandary, wondering for years what it might be, right? Because you could imagine thousands and thousands of possibilities, but there's only 7. So when you choose from among 7, it's not hard to find. And if you find your basic purpose on that scale, it will change your life. It will dramatically clarify who you are, what you're about, because you throw out the other 7. They're for other people. They're not for you. And that is extremely enlightening for a person. Now, once you do that, you're done with that skill. That's it. Very few people ever improve on that scale. Most people spend their whole lives on one level. But knowing what it is really helps you because you know what you're doing. You know what you're trying to do. It clarifies your life. Now, there are other scales that are specific scales. And some of those you can change on by the minute. So, for example, there's a scale of evaluation. When a person comes into a situation, he comes in at level 4, which is neutral on the scale of evaluation. And then as he experiences it, he moves up or down. So let's say you have a friend from Africa, never seen a baseball game, never been to a baseball game, right? So you're in America, you take him to a baseball game. You say, well, we're going to the game, come with us. He says, okay, right? He doesn't know anything. So when he walks in that stadium, he's at level 4, neutral. Now, as he observes the game, he's either going to move up the scale evaluation or down the scale evaluation. If he likes it, he's going to move up from 4 to 3. And if he really likes it, he's going to move from 3 to 2. Or he might not like it at all. He might say, why would anybody want to watch this? And he goes down the scale. He might go down to level 5. So you see, this is happening in minutes.
Right.
Also, you have to realize that every person is unique and every person's situation is unique. So there's no one size fits all in the sense of how fast. Some scales, generally you move quickly on, and some scales you don't. For example, there's a scale of spiritual identity. Most people do not change on that in their lifetimes. They find a level, that's the level. They spend their whole life on one level. Of course, there are always exceptions. I could talk to you about specific people who move up or down, but generally that's a scale. But just finding out that level is immensely clarifying. You know your spiritual identity. I mean, that is a transformational moment. So you have to realize that most of these scales can be used many times in many different ways. So you could use a scale, take a specific scale, you can use it 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 times in different contexts on different persons. So you have to realize that this is universally applicable. So whatever is going on in your life, you can turn to the appropriate scale or scales. Sometimes it's more than one. Find where you are or find where the other person is. So for example, let's say you have a parent who has a child who's having trouble in school. There's a scale of scholarship. And I state what the 7 levels of scholarship are and how to move someone up that scale. It's very specific. So the father, let's say he has a 12-year-old daughter. He says, come over here, let me show you something. Look at this glossary. So she reads it. She says, yeah. And he says, now I want you to look at this scale of scholarship. Just read the scale. So she looks at it. And in a matter of seconds, she will find a bracket. She will say to the parent, well, I can see I'm either a 3, 4, or 5. See, she's already thrown out 4 levels. Then you can say, okay,
yeah, that's specific.
Now let's have you read the text. So she sits down for 5 minutes and reads the text about the scale, how it works, how to move up, what causes you to go down. And then she goes back to it. And he says, okay, now look at it. What level are you at? And she will then say, I can see that I'm at level 4. And she will be happy with that. And then he'll say, okay, let's move you to level 3. And he can help her to move up to level 3. And he has made her a better student. And he has done it without leaving home, without spending any money, without hiring anybody. So I designed these scales to wrap around the reader. When you look at it, it wraps around you. It's not difficult. Now, the one caveat is you have to know what the words mean, because the scales are named and the levels are named. But I give you the definitions.
Yeah, so everything's self-explanatory. You just need to read the book and you'll understand.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is, each one of these scales is like a roadmap for the corresponding area of life. So if I may, I'd like to tell you the names of the scales so your listeners will know what we're talking about here, okay? This will only take about a minute, okay? These are the individual scales: the scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, the scale of reaction. And the group scales are the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Each of these 35 scales is unique. You cannot infer anything about scale A by looking at scale B. And because of that, it covers all of human phenomena. And that's valuable because you know, before you open the book, whatever situation or dilemma or quandary or problem you're trying to solve, this book will address it.
Yeah,
it's just a question of figuring out which scale is relevant. Sometimes there are several. Very often there's 3, 4, 5, 6 scales that are relevant to your situation. So you find your level or find the other person's level and then move up, and you have improved.
Yeah, I see that it's multidimensional and it's specific for different areas of life, and everybody could find where they are and where they're going and how to get there, either for themselves or help others. So that would be very beneficial for everyone to look into, and I will include the link for your website to check out the book over there. And if they want to order, they can order, I think, on Amazon, right? And there are different ways to order.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I'm glad that we had that conversation, and thank you for your wisdom and thoughts and sharing your story and how you came up with this idea, and especially with knowledge of a new transformational and revolutionary work. Every one of us would be I would think, like, benefit from it, because this is what we are. We're human beings and we want to develop ourselves. And this is our, time here on earth to do that. So with the tools available, now we can, kind of like use that information into going forward. And thank you so much again for sharing, and hope you have a good day today.
Okay, I just want to say, as we close, I invite your listeners to go to my website, septemics.com, SEPTEMICS, and there they can read what readers have said about it, what journalists have written about it, what the reviews are, and you can read sections of the book itself.
Yes, thank you so much, and everybody will check it out, and also will be in the show notes as well.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.